Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson, and welcome to Lecture 6A, Site Management and Inspections. In this particular class, we are going to be looking at the different types of site meetings that occur and construction project meetings that occur. In a previous lecture, we looked at the things you can do to conduct an effective meeting. Today we're going to be looking at the various different types of meetings that you may incur in a construction project. There's meetings that go beyond this for obvious reasons, but these are very typical type meetings that will occur on a construction project and should occur regularly on a construction project. In lecture 6B, we'll be looking at the aspect of negotiations. So let's get started. We'll look at the basic format that construction meetings should follow, although I'll be very brief on that. We kind of covered that previously. Describe the different meetings, what they accomplish, who should attend, the agendas that should be used, so the typical types of agendas based on the types of meetings, and the different methods. In the Part B, we'll be looking at the different methods used to resolve disputes, mediation, arbitration, and negotiation. So we'll be looking at that aspect as we go in lecture 6B. All right, so let's get started. So meetings, we know that we have meetings because we typically want to solve a problem or clarify, be transparent about certain processes that we're going to be proceeding with. And we know that we should keep an agenda. Remember, we talked about agendas. They should really sort of outline the goals that we're trying to achieve, and they should be very clear on what we're going to be doing in the meetings. And we want to make sure that those are given out far in advance of the meetings. And then we want to have minutes to hold people accountable to the items that they've been assigned to during the meetings. And that way we can always go back, we can check the minutes, make sure that something was said, verified. And usually you start off the next meeting with an acceptance of the previous meeting's minutes by the parties. That way, if something was not quite correct or needs more specifics, then it could be corrected in the minutes. So one of the early meetings that you'd be looking at is a partnering meeting and workshop meeting. So very often you may be doing a partnering meeting to come together on a contract or agreement creation or finalizing a working agreement. So you're really sort of trying to see how you and the other party are going to be working together. And it's sort of that coming together of the minds and making sure there's clarity in the contract and each party knows what they're responsible for doing. And so you could think of some of the different typical types of construction meetings that may go on. Contractors' pre-construction planning meetings. So you haven't really sort of gotten things up and running yet. You're in pre-construction and you're trying to plan out the project. And so you're bringing in effective members to do that. And of course, subcontractor pre-award meeting. We'll be going through each one of these. Pre-construction meeting with the subcontractors. Very, very important meetings, these two aspects, the pre-award and then pre-construction. They both have different purposes and some of them are similar in a lot of ways too. Project meetings with consultants and our clients. Well, you got different people attending those meetings, right? Ongoing subcontractor meetings. So now we're actually in the thick of things and we're going to be having ongoing individual subcontractor meetings, especially when there's a certain level of complexity in the work. And then of course we're going to have short-term look-ahead meetings to try to make sure that we get our schedules in alignment for the work that is coming up. Commissioning meetings for the test and commissioning process of the building systems to make sure that we are clear on the things that need to be done during the testing processes. That way the applicable subcontractors can make sure that whatever they're installing is going to meet the quality standards that'll be set forth in the commissioning process. Your own team, you got to meet with your own team ongoing. So you've got clarification in your own team. If there's certain issues, you want to sort of highlight those issues and make sure that everybody is moving in the same direction. And of course, project closeout, which we'll be looking at later in the course, is the end of the project. And we want to make sure we close out the project. And there's a bunch of things that we want to ensure that we've done, that we can effectively close it out. And we also want to look at best practices and learning that's occurred. And post-project evaluation and review meetings. Well, after the project's over, you want to finalize what did we learn and what should we take forward, and how can we communicate that internally across the company so that others can learn from this particular project. So there's a whole bunch of construction meetings that we have to be involved with. So one of the goals of partnering meetings is, number one, we want to make sure that we want to prevent the creation of adversarial relationships. So if we're bringing together early, we can start to build strong relationships before there's any issues. That's always an important thing to do. And it also helps us create an understanding between each organization, whoever you're partnering with. Clarity of goals, clarity of understanding, and creating that mutual understanding is very important before you have issues. So what we referred to earlier in the course as SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound, and adding the aspects of commitment and confidence, the self-efficacy in there, becomes important in being successful in that area, because you should have common goals that you're working towards so that the work can be accepted and you can move forward from there. Going back to what we talked about earlier in the course, there's a mission, there's what you're trying to achieve in this project. And this very much ties to what they call a project charter in PMP, Project Management Professional Designation. So you have a mission. What is the purpose of this project team to develop, and sort of outlines that. And so in this example, the mission of the project team consists of all the design organizations, the owner's personnel, construction group, and its stakeholders. It is the successful completion of such and such high school project. The success is defined as meeting the owner's expectation for building that is within budget, on time, and to a quality specified by the project documents. Gee, that sounds very familiar. Remember, we talked about time, cost, quality, scope, and safety. It really sort of is encompassing all of those elements when you think about it. And when we think about the aspect of stakeholders, everybody is included in that statement, right? You've got the owner, you've got the consultant, you've got the subcontractors, you've got major subcontractors, and the whole construction group. So this is really pulling all of those areas together. Objectives: number of employee lost time due to accidents. So one of the objectives would be to have a very low or no numbers, like no employee lost time due to accidents. That would always be the goal. Create an environment so that all employees strive for quality. So, and quality is a way of thinking, right? How you go about and how you think about the work stands with quality, as we'll discuss again in a later chapter. Commit to finishing the project a month early. Maintain total change order costs below 5% of the total project budget. Whatever, those are just samples, right? So you can, whatever the project itself, the drivers are. Remember we talked about earlier, time, cost, quality. What's the main driver of the client? Understanding their main drives and making sure that your mission in the project is in alignment with the key stakeholders that you're working with. And that helps a lot in the decision-making process and the culture of the project going forward. So it's really trying to get a commitment in there. In the signature aspect, there's this commitment to delivering on that. So the contractor's pre-construction planning and organization meeting at the very early stages. You haven't assigned all of the staffing and you're trying to figure out exactly the project team that you're going to have on board. Usually the senior members of the team are already perhaps brought on board, like the project manager and the site super. But beyond that, you may be looking at what is the appropriate staffing for this size and scope of project. Really trying to come to grips with the budget and the estimator's estimate that would now have been put into a budget for the project. And budget means that you're going to assign budget codes to it so that you can monitor the work going forward to see how you're comparing to the budget. You don't want to wait till the end of the project to see how you're doing. You want to be able to have a budget so that you can align with certain groupings of work and see how the project is progressing. Developing a construction plan and preliminary schedule, and this will lead to what we call the baseline schedule, which is the actual plan for the project and the schedule for the project. And then what you'll do is you'll measure what's actually happening against the baseline schedule. And if you're falling behind, you'll work to try to get that time back. So you're in the initial planning of putting this together. An outline for the safety, fire protection, environmental considerations that may be job specific, a safety program for the project that would come into play, and any specific environmental concerns. Maybe this is a brownfield site. Maybe there's some remediation to be done. Maybe it backs up onto a ravine. There's got to be considerations for silt spread and other aspects. So those types of things would be planned. And what would be the administrative requirements, and how are we going to handle that? And how are our billings going to be handled? How are all of these elements that are important with the project to be developed? So there's got to be processes and systems and clarifications that are brought in with the pre-construction meeting. All right. A pre-construction meeting with subcontractors. And it says not always held, but should be where possible. I'm going to say that I would always suggest you want to have a pre-construction meeting with the subcontractors. You want to have a pre-award meeting with the subcontractors, and you want to have a pre-construction meeting with the subcontractors. The difference being pre-award, you're looking at what are we doing on this project. So it's like the partnering meeting, but now it's between you, if you're the GC, and the subcontractor. You're making sure that you're on the same page. You're making sure that the interpretations of the drawings, specifications, and contract are clearly understood by both parties. You don't want one side to sign on and be thinking that what they're going to deliver is different than what you expect. You want to get alignment from the beginning on that. Pre-construction meeting with the subcontractors. Well, now you've awarded the contract, and now what you want to do is make sure that you've got clarification that if there's long lead items, they're being ordered well in advance, that there's clarification on key milestone timeframes, that work sequencing has been discussed, resources have been discussed. It's always an excellent practice to try to get the resource loading expectations from the subcontractors. I'm telling you now, they don't like to give that because they don't like to tell what their numbers are and their people are. They're always worried that somebody's going to be trying to figure out how they estimate their jobs. The other thing that they concern themselves with is they don't want to commit to that because they don't know how things are going to play out yet. But for your purposes, you want to find out what the expectation is. So if they expect to do the rough-ins in 3 weeks, it'd be nice to know, well, they expect to do the rough-ins in 3 weeks. Say it's plumbing rough-ins. Well, 3 weeks based on 5 people, 10 people, 20 people. How many plumbers do you plan to have on site during that time period? Because then when the work starts, and if they committed to having 15 people on site and there's only 10 people and it seems like they're not keeping up, then you definitely want to have those discussions early on with them, right? So it's good to have those commitments. It makes it a lot more easier to have those discussions later on when the work's actually being done. So yeah, and with the project pre-construction meeting, you have all the major parties together prior to starting the work. And we have pre-construction meetings with the owner and the consultants, and we have pre-construction meetings with a gathering of the major subcontractors as well. In lean construction methodology, we actually have everybody together. So if you're using lean construction methodology, we have everybody together, and we actually do a milestone pull planning session where we actually develop out from milestone dates that have been developed with the bid process, a schedule, right? So we get a high-level schedule developed out with the actual key and participating subcontractors at that stage. And that becomes sort of a roadmap for developing the more detailed schedule. So pre-construction contract review, agreement to a notice to proceed date. So that this is ahead of construction. So when is the start date that we're going to start mobilizing on site? Layout and field control issues, review of preliminary schedule, sequence of work, and owner's site restrictions. So what constraints are we working with, right? So maybe not even only the owner's site restrictions, could be the municipality site restrictions. So if we want to close a lane to deliver materials, there might be certain time frames that you can't, maybe certain time frames that you can, not during rush hour. With the required facilities, trailers, layouts, so we're doing basically a site layout plan, like was discussed in earlier lecture, and you're looking at where are we going to locate the trailers, where are we going to locate the material hoist, the gates, the arrival gates, storage, laydown areas, all of that kind of things for coordination purposes. And going over any special administrative procedures, special certifications, and trying to lay out ongoing meeting dates and getting those all resolved where we have ongoing meetings. That's, as I mentioned before in the earlier lecture on when I discussed meetings, is it's good to have a specific meeting time and a specific day during the week if you have ongoing meetings. So if I have a weekly meeting, it's good to say, all right, this weekly meeting is going to take place 8 a.m. Thursday morning for the next 6 months. That's helpful for those participants that are trying to open up their schedule. And sometimes you have to work the dates to fit most people's schedules, and that takes a little bit of time, the first meeting, but after that, you don't have to keep doing it. Typical agenda, so review last minute meetings, get acceptance, review. So this is typical project meetings that you would be doing on a weekly basis. And so review of the last meeting's minutes, submittal status and schedule status, update, where are we? Any RFIs that may be coming up, review of substitutions, changes, discussion of new issues, any field observations that is going on, and any other agenda items, quite frankly, that you would want to put in there. Construction phase subcontractor meetings. This is where we want to really sort of work out on the short-term schedules and on the phase planning for the work. So it's problems are verbalized. We want to solve any anticipated problems. We want to look at best coordination and collaboration with the actual subcontractors. And generally the best people to have at those meetings from the subcontractors are their foremen. The foremen are the head of the production crews for the subcontractors. They know their work the absolute best, particularly when we're talking about their work in the short term. So work that's coming up in the next 2 weeks, they know their work inside and out, which is very, very helpful in planning and coordinating. They also know the crews and the crew sizes. They know their own crews, how effective they are, how not effective they are, and their commitments are considered to be more likely to be accurate than somebody else's. Construction staff meetings are held for larger project. You got a big staff, so you could have a number of field engineers or project coordinators, site super, assistant site super, PM, assistant PM. You could have an M&E coordinator, mechanical electrical coordinator, a lead coordinator. So there's a number of positions that could be a BIM coordinator, building information modeling coordinator, that you may want to have meetings with your project team. A scheduler, you could have a full-time scheduler on your project if it's a large project. So you want to sort of get your team pointed in the same direction. As we said, this is your chance to lead your teams. So these meetings should be taken very, very seriously. And problems, solutions, different tactics that you might want to take on the project based on certain things that are occurring. Changes to maybe the site layout, the closing off of lanes, trying to get different permit acceptances from the municipality. These are all possibilities at construction staff meetings. Status of submittals, RFIs, delivery of material and equipment is reviewed. You might be going through some aspects of the material schedule and how you're going to maximize, not the material schedule, but your hoisting and equipment schedule, and how you're going to maximize the use of it. So, and of course, QC, quality control, and job site safety are discussed. And there may be separate safety meetings as well. Sometimes you might have single issue meetings, so they may not be ongoing or weekly, so you just bring them up and you make sure that you have the appropriate people at them, maybe for a specific topic, a specific concern. You may have to have a meeting that there's some sort of disagreement between several parties and you want to sort of have this meeting to sort of come to a resolution about it. Maybe one subcontractor is not getting along with another one on the site and you want to try to get some resolution on it. So you might want to pull that out separate from your other meetings so it doesn't conflict with the other parts of the other meetings. And if something seems to be not being performed that well, you probably don't want to air that in front of everybody. You want to have that sort of more one-on-one or two-on-two or whatever the combination is. Also, you may have a meeting with an outside representative that you need to meet with. Maybe it's the commissioning agent for the owner, and you have a special meeting that you want to discuss the commissioning process before it gets into more of a regular discussion with your subtrades. Payment processing, somebody didn't get paid, somebody, those kind of things. Project closeout, well, that's a big area unto itself. And project closeout, the key thing to remember about project closeout, we'll talk about this in one of the last lectures of the course. You really should start planning project closeout at the beginning of the project. Sounds kind of, why am I planning project closeout at the beginning? Because you want it to go smoothly at the end, right? If you want project closeout to go smoothly at the end, then you don't leave it till the end. So it's this old saying, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. If you go slow at the beginning and you work out the details with this, it's going to help you to go more smoothly through the project. If you go more smoothly through the project, it's going to be a fast process towards the end and not this big behemoth that grows and grows and grows. So early on, it's the opportunity to define the closeout procedures, specify additional items, discuss completion of punch list. And really, when we talk about a punch list, you should be doing these things as the project goes along as much as possible, because you don't want the punch list to be too big at the end. You want the punch list to be something that's manageable near the end. And when you have the trades and the parties at your site, that's the time to get things fixed as much as possible. I wish I could say that gets rid of the punch list. It doesn't, but your goal is to have a minimal punch list rather than an extraordinary or extraordinarily sized punch list, which could make your project be delayed, which could mean you don't get occupancy, which might mean you don't get substantial completion. And then you'd have an unhappy owner. And then you'd probably be there longer, which is costing you money. All of those kind of things. And project closeout, it's a chapter later in the book, and it's a lecture that we'll do. It encompasses a lot more than that. But the meeting process early and on an ongoing basis is important. You can tie closeout process probably during the project to your regular meetings, but it definitely needs to be agenda topics, and a separate early meeting on this should be done. Post-project review and evaluation. Well, you really want to, if you've done everything that we've been talking about so far in this course, you've got a lot of very excellent data that you've gathered. You've got good data, and then we'll be getting into schedule management and project monitoring and quality control, quality assurance in the weeks to come. But at the end of the day, if you've done your due diligence and you've been collecting this data from meetings, from submittal processes, from schedule managements, from budget control mechanisms, tracking variances, you're going to have great data that'll give you really good feedback, and you'll understand, where did we make money? Where did we lose money? Why did we lose money? how can we prevent this from happening again in the future? What are the things that we can do? How can we communicate this across the organization to better ourselves? So a post-project review and evaluation is a very important process, and having a meeting on that with the consultants, the owner, the subcontractors, it can be a really helpful tool for a company to continuously improve and get better. And we talked again in an earlier lecture about productivity and monitoring that, and sometimes it's worth sweating the small stuff. Well, this is where this is coming from, and this will give you good feedback to make long-term outstanding improvements to your business, to yourself personally as well, in your methods and of management. If you're always asking yourself, how can I do something better? You're going to get better, right? Ask yourself those questions, you answer the questions, and you tweak the things you're doing, you're going to get better. On the other hand, if you don't, and you just kind of go through the motions on every project, I don't know if it was Einstein that quoted it, but he's largely credited with it. It's in the idea is that it's insanity to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So post-project review and evaluation. Sometimes they call it project audit. I don't really like the word project audit. It's kind of, I used to do this training in Ottawa, and I felt like everybody thought I was talking about Revenue Canada. A project review, it's really looking at both what you did well too, because you got all the data. What did you do well? Maybe you tried a new BIM technique or technology and it worked really well. Maybe you did last planner scheduling from lean construction methodology, and this was a pilot and it worked really well. You'd want to be able to look at those things too. So it's not just what's negative, it's on both sides. Because you're a big organization, how do I spread this? And we don't have to make the same mistakes over and over again. We can share that information. And if we pilot something that's really good, we can share that information to help us improve. So in summary, construction project meetings include contractors' pre-construction planning organization meetings, pre-construction meeting with subcontractors, project pre-construction meeting, project subcontractor partnering meetings, contractor staff meetings, project closeout and post-project evaluations. And I would also add things like you might have separate meetings if it's say it's a LEED project, Leadership in Energy Efficient Design certification. That might require its own set of meetings so that we make sure that we are addressing the items that we've committed to doing to achieve platinum certification, whatever the certification might be, and where the points are coming from and how we tend to vet them, how we intend to collect the documentation for it so we're not chasing after it at the end, closeout period. And that could be a feed out from closeout, or it could be a separate item that's addressed early on. So hopefully that's giving you a good overview of the actual types of meetings, but to go back in one of the earlier lectures and you will see how to conduct an effective meeting. And for what we covered in how to conduct an effective meeting goes for any one of these meetings. So that process that's in there goes for any one of those meetings. So I hope that got that message across, and I just wanted to say have a wonderful day. Tom Stephenson signing off, and I will see you next time when we get together.